Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Neil Haley Show. Another exciting guest will be on the program. Go to my website, tolltutor.net, for more information. Twitter, Tolltutor, Neil S. Haley, Facebook, LinkedIn, Neil Haley, Instagram, Tolltutor, Pinterest, Neil Haley, and Google Plus, Neil Haley. And you watch the show every week. You're saying, well, you have an education guest, you have a professor of history, you have a celebrity. It varies. Well, hey, anyone that wants to spend time with me, I'm interested in talking with. So I love working with Triumph Books, and we'll always have Triumph Book authors on this program. Best sports book publishing company, I think, in the world. I'm excited to welcome to the program author Zach Meisel, author of 100 Things the Indians Should Know and Do Before They Die. Zach, I'm holding up the book, and thanks for calling. And once I heard I could have you on the show and talk about my love for the Indians, and this is Pittsburgh's my television flagship station. I'm sure people are like, really? But Zach, thanks for calling.
Yeah, as long as you're not interjecting any Browns and Steelers talk into it, I think it's fair ground.
Well, we don't want to talk about your train wreck, which is the Browns. So we'll continue with the Indians tradition. And it's very interesting to talk about. When we talk about in the 100 Things, we think about Cleveland sports history in general. For our national audience, Cleveland sports history has had some real sad events, hasn't it? For sure. We're not winning. It's been years, right? For sure.
It seems like it's been eternity, and I think it's funny. I did a series about a year ago. It was the 50-year anniversary of Cleveland's last professional sports championship, and ironically, that was the Browns in 1964, who seem like they are the farthest one away from that standard every single year. And the Indians had so many great years in the 90s. The Cavs have had great years with LeBron James. They had some good years before that with Mark Price and Brad Daugherty. None of those teams ever made it to the promised land, and I think it's funny because every year in Cleveland, there's like this ranking of the three big teams. Which team is closest to that sacred standard that Cleveland just has never experienced? And that answer to that question changes almost by the week. So
well, I'm hoping it's the Cavs. I'm a huge Cleveland Cavalier fan as well. I love having LeBron back, and we'll see what happens. It's exciting what they're doing, and see if they can keep getting better. So you might that history in a couple of years might be over. We might talk about Cleveland not winning anymore.
Yeah, it is possible. I think the Browns were 7-4 at one point last year, and everyone was saying that they would be the one to buck the trend. And we saw how quickly that ended. So you never know in Cleveland. I think fans have conditioned themselves to just expect the worst.
So in the 100 Things book, I'm sure we're going to talk about winning in baseball. Winning. When was the last time the Indians won a championship, by the way? What year?
1948. So it's been a while.
Okay. So I'm sure that's definitely in your 100 Things book for sure. Tell us a little about the 1948 team.
Yeah, I mean, it was a great team. And the thing about back then in baseball is there were no playoffs. There wasn't this, say, win 88 games, sneak in and see what you can do in October. It was you have to be the best team in the American League, and you just go to the World Series. And they had a really good team. Lou Boudreau was the player manager, and he was a young kid who became the player manager, and a lot of his teammates weren't really happy about that because, they wanted a veteran leader on that team, and he kind of just proved himself, went out there, and they had a great pitching staff. Bob Feller was on that team, and they beat, or they won the World Series, and the thing is, they should have won more. The Indians were a really good team from about the mid-40s through the mid-50s, and they made the World Series again in 1954 and got swept by Willie Mays and the Giants. And it seemed like every single year the Indians didn't make it. The New York Yankees did. And that's they had a dynasty at that point. So it was the 1948 team, the Indians kind of thought they had something and they would build upon it, and they couldn't because the Yankees were winning 100, 110 games every single year.
It's definitely interesting when you talk about the times in Cleveland history where they're a really good team, yet there was one team better. I guess that happened definitely with the Indians as well. 1920 again was a good year for the Indians. Is that correct?
Yeah, that was their previous. They were their first World Series title. They've got two. They were a charter member of the American League in 1901. It's been a long time, and they've got two World Series titles. So they don't come around very often, and when they do, it's proof that it's a really good team.
What would you say about Indians fans in general? Would you say that they're loyal Indians fans?
Yeah, I would say so. I think a lot of that has to do with the tradition and the history of the franchise. They've been around a long time. It's had a lot of downs. They were from 1954 when they made the World Series. They didn't make the playoffs again until 1995, and in those 4 decades, there were a lot of really bad seasons. I think they had 3 seasons where they had a winning record, and most of those seasons were a game or two above 500. They were really bad, and they changed ownership a lot, brought in new people. Nothing seemed to work. We've all seen the movie Major League, and
Yes.
there's a reason that was created based on the Indians. They were really just a sorry, sad sack, and the fans, though, were loyal. I mean, they stuck with them, and you saw, obviously, the 90s, when they sold out, set the sellout record, 455 straight games at Jacobs Field. That's proof right there. Fans do embrace baseball in Cleveland. You might not always see it in the stands, but there is a very loyal sector of people that love this team.
Okay, we're again talking to Zach Meisel, author of 100 Things the Indians Should Know and Do Before They Die. Let's talk Major League, and let's talk Major League for a couple minutes for sure, because, I mean, that's for our national audience. That's what they think about when they first think of the Cleveland Indians a lot of times is Major League. And so when that movie was filmed and then it came out, oh my gosh, it had to be just gigantic. How the Indians became a fan favorite all over the place from that movie. Wouldn't you agree? In a lot of ways.
Yeah, and that was the tail end of that long stretch of losing that I was talking about. The script and the request to make the movie and base it off the Indians came into the front offices like on their desk, and they had to approve it. And it was, the owner looked at it, he gave it to his PR guy and said, "Here, you handle this." And he thought, you know what the heck? It'll be fun for our players. They'll get to hang out with the movie stars a little bit while they're filming. And it was. And they enjoyed it. Charlie Sheen had a night out on the town with some Indians players. And it was, the Indians' reputation, it wasn't like it could get worse at that point. They hadn't really won anything in 40 years. And then you have this movie, which is a big hit. People still watch it. It's funny. And now what they were able to do was, 5-6 years later, they finally started winning, and it was, they were able to put that reputation behind them. And it's like, that team is such a different era in the 80s than it was in the 90s. And I think, they changed their uniforms, and they were able to get away from that. So they had the fun, they kind of poked fun at themselves, but pretty quickly they turned the page and they became a respectable franchise.
How much did that lead that movie of people wanting to come and watch the Tribe when they were tourists now wanting to see the Indians because of that movie? I'm sure that was something where they, hey, we got to go to this ballpark, right? Before
Sure.
the Jake, yeah.
Yeah, and I think even more than that, you kind of laughed when the Indians came to your town because,
right.
You're a Yankees fan, you go to Yankee Stadium, you see your team's playing the Indians, and you laugh and say, hey, maybe Willie Mays Hayes will get a hit today, or hopefully they bring in Wild things. So it didn't do any favors for the Indians' reputation, but it at least kept them kind of in the limelight.
Zach, at that time, how old were you when Major League came out?
I don't even know if I was born yet. I think I was born in '89, and I think it came out right around then. So.
So it had to become a cult classic for you when you got older, then, right?
Of course. And it was weird for me because I grew up on the '90s teams in the Indians that were in the playoffs every single year, and they had different uniforms and had a full ballpark, and it was hard for me to relate. I couldn't believe it was the same franchise.
Yeah, it's interesting to look at specifically, and then when you finally see the movie and see the popularity of it. And so, did you do some research? Because I know Major League's in the book of more about how it was in Cleveland when this happened and how it kind of energized the city having this movie?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the main thing was Indians fans. Well, what did they have to cheer about? They actually seemed, Sports Illustrated put them on the cover right a couple years before the movie actually came out. Everyone thought the Indians were going to be really good. I think the headline of the Sports Illustrated cover was Indian Rising, and they projected them to win a ton of games and go to the World Series. And, it was finally, after 30 years of misery, this team was going to turn the corner and finally produce something. And then I think they ended up losing, most of their games. They were just absolutely awful. It was another one in the line of the Sports Illustrated jinx, and it was basically at that point, it's like, okay, what can this franchise possibly do right? And so at least you have this movie, you can laugh at it. Hey, we're involved in something that's cool. And I think, it was something for the fans at least, because, boy, there was really nothing to cheer about at that time.
Exactly. So when we get back, we're going to kind of really delve into some things about the Indians. My time becoming an Indians fan, don't call me bandwagon. It was like after Major League, I started liking the team. And then the years of the Indians winning and being so close to a championship. And I'm sure Cleveland fans want to talk about that more and talk about my favorite players from the Indians. And that's what people got to definitely check out 100 things the Indians fans should know and do before they die. And I'm sure that you'll learn more about Cleveland Indians baseball than you ever known, and the history of it and all the different things, and really understand and cherish the Indians could be back just like the Pirates are back. And I would love to see this year, Zach, Pirates-Indians World Series. That would be just tremendous. Would that be?
It sounds far-fetched, but I don't think it's actually as far-fetched as it is, as you would think.
That would be that's like when the Broncos play the Steelers in the AFC Championship. That's like Christmas for me, to put the Indians and Pirates in the World Series. And I remember when interleague play and they finally got to play each other, that was really a lot of fun as well, going to the ballpark to watch that, because I think the Indians were really good at that time and the Pirates were really bad. But I want that. That's what I want. Indians-Pirates World Series. So when we get back, more Zach Meisel. You can go to my website, TollTutor.net, for more information. Twitter, TollTutor, Neil S. Haley, Facebook. And I want to reminisce how the Indians recharged themselves and had a great years in the 90s, and how they're a little bit coming back. So we'll be back as you're watching the Neil Haley Show with more great talk with Zach Meisel.
Andy Amrine, EV True Value Hardware, with the Bethel Park Volunteer Scholarship Fund. This prize here that my fellow producers and I are standing behind is a Weber SP310 stainless steel propane barbecue grill.
We have the greatest stainless steel Weber grill in history. Come buy these $1 tickets right now.
These tickets are available now at multiple Bethel Park locations.
Tickets are available every day, 7 days a week at EV True Value Hardware.
Here at the front desk at the library.
Tickets are also available at BPTV's offices during regular office hours. If the lights are on, come on in. We're friendly. We promise. We'll sell you tickets. Who's doing that?
You heard the locations. I am a location. Come and see me or out in the streets. On my show, you get the talking machine going with buying $1 tickets everywhere.
Mayor Allen will pull the winning ticket during the regular council meeting on Monday, June 8th, live on BPTV.
Thank you for supporting the Bethel Park Volunteer Scholarship Fund. Buy your tickets today.
Or else.
We're back to the Neil Haley Show and enjoying my conversation with Zach Meisel, author of 100 Things Indian Fans Should Know and Do Before They Die. And I'm getting better at that title, Zach, because I've interviewed so many 100 Things from Triumph Books. I'd like to interview them all. It's just like the greatest history in the world that you can be the best person in the world to go and watch a sporting event and say, let me tell you a little bit about this team. Because if I could interview every 100 Things person, Zach, I would really be great at parties, right? With the little facts and different nuances of each sporting. Have you written any other 100 Things? Or is the only one you've written, Zach, of the 100 books?
This is the only one of these I've written. I'm finishing up something similar. It's not in the 100 Things series, but on Ohio State and football and basketball. So it's kind of similar. But yeah, these books are great for just knowing absolutely everything.
Yes.
If there's anything you want to know about a particular team, there's some chapter or sidebar in that book that's going to have it.
Okay, let's talk about Mike Hargrove, because that's what really the Indians changed their attitude. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, you think about the teams he resided over in the 90s and the personalities he had in that clubhouse. And you've got people like Albert Bell, who you stay out of his way because you never know what he's going to do. You've got a guy like Kenny Lofton, who really self-centered and kind of like a poor man's Albert Bell in that
kind
respect.
of a Willie Mays Hayes. Like you really got your Willie Mays Hayes now.
Absolutely. You've got veteran pitchers who have been around for a long time who don't want you telling them how to pitch. They know what they're doing. Mm-hmm. You've got up-and-coming big power hitters. You've really got a locker room full of explosive personalities, and he was kind of the calm central figure who just meshed everybody together and kind of just made it work. And there are very few people who could do that, and he did it really well. And I think a lot of people want to, maybe harp on him for certain in-game decisions or strategy or this and that. And he eventually lost his job because of that kind of thing and because they never won a World Series. But, boy, right. I don't know who else you could say could be the manager of that team and get all those personalities to work in accordance.
Exactly. So how quick did this happen? Like it just changed completely once Hargrove came? Give us that little story.
No, so he was the manager really before they started to get good. And they started the rebuilding process about 1989, and that was when they knew they were going to get a new ballpark. And their goal was when Jacobs Field opens in 1994, that's when we want to be just hitting our stride. We want these young kids that we kind of accumulated in the minor leagues to reach the big league level, get a little taste of it, and in 1994, that's when they take off. And so Hargrove, his job was to help develop the minor leaguers. They had Albert Bell that they drafted. They drafted Jim Thome, Manny Ramirez. And then in 1994, before that season, they kind of got a feel that they were going to be good. So they added a few free agents. They added Dennis Martinez. They added Eddie Murray. And those were the outside help. That was to complement the young kids. And that's when Hargrove, it was really his job. Okay, these kids are getting a taste of success. It's going to go to their head. How do you keep them level-headed? How do you keep them getting along, wanting to win? And that's, from 94 on, he did such a good job of that.
He definitely did. And so think about it, right? When the ballpark opens up, they're winning. And that's the best recipe for success. You look at the Baltimore Orioles, when they opened Camden Yards, they started finally winning. Same thing with the Jake. The Pirates, no, that's not the case. It took a lot longer for that to happen. But when you get a new ballpark, people are already buying tickets. You have a good quality program on the field. Look out. The place is going to go on fire, Indians baseball, right? For sure. You got every component put together then.
It's the perfect storm. That's how you produce 455 straight sellouts. The Cleveland Browns left for a few years. That certainly helped. But they had a new ballpark. It was a beautiful new place. Cleveland Stadium was a giant dump really on the edge of the lake. And so, Jacobs Field
think about that when you think about Cleveland, right, Zach? I'm just kidding.
Yeah. So Jacobs Field was just this marvel, and it looked magnificent, and fans fell in love with it, and they wanted to keep coming back, and it certainly helped that the team was winning on the field.
Yeah, between Camden Yards, Jacobs Field, and PNC Park, three awesome, beautiful ballparks to say the least. And they start winning, and people start becoming Indian fans, not just in Cleveland. Then they become a favorite because you want them to dethrone the hated teams in their division, right? For sure. They wanted them to take out those teams in the AL and really become the team, right? That's the big
Right.
thing nationally as well. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, and
yeah,
1994 was the first year they were actually good, and then you had the Major League Baseball strike, so there were no playoffs that year. And in 1995, their first full season, really, they won 100 games and they only lost 44. They had the best record in the league. They made the World Series, and that was like, okay, this is something Cleveland hasn't experienced in 40 years, and this is, because these kids are still young and this team is still good, there's no end in sight.
right.
They should be this good forever. So you couldn't have scripted it more perfectly if you were the Indians ownership group. And, everything worked well, and that's how you really got the fans to latch on and believe.
And believe. And let's talk about the World Series. I remember it was cold, especially in the Cleveland games, watching them on TV and thinking, this is the year you're going to win the World Series, right? You thought, how old were you, Zach, when that World Series was going on?
Well, so they made it in '95, and then '97 was the one where they lost to the Marlins in the bottom of the 11th inning in Game 7.
Mm-hmm.
That was so in 1997. So I would have been 6 for the first one and 8 for the second one. But I'll tell you, I remember watching it on TV vividly.
And seeing what happens. So how great has it been, Zach, to promote this book and go out and talk to Indians fans and talk about all the stories and things like that from a variety of fans, for sure. It's been fun, right?
It has been great because this town is still so attached to those '90s teams. You'll always see guys like Omar Vizquel, Carlos Baerga, Jim Thome. The Indians today still welcome these guys back, and they have them throw out the first pitch. They induct them into their team Hall of Fame. This year it's the 20-year anniversary of that '95 team, and they're going to dedicate an entire weekend to celebrating that team and bring all the players back.
Oh, that's great.
So fans still want to read about those guys. They want to hear stories from that weren't popular stories back then that they may not have known about, and they just want to feel they want to get nostalgic about that. They want to learn more about the recent years and what's happening. They want to read about the 1948 team and kind of the history of the franchise because there's so much. I mean, it's not like this was an expansion team in 1993 and they've been around for 20 years and there isn't much that no one knows. This team's been around for more than 100 years, so there's 100 things about the Indians could have been 1,000 things easily.
Right.
And I think there's really something for every age, every demographic. It's this franchise has a lot to offer just because of the tradition and the history.
So tell me, what was the most obscure thing you learned from this 100 Things book?
Boy, most obscure. I think it was with some of the guys in the 90s really delving more into their personalities. I mean, like we touched on, I was a kid during that time. For me, all I cared about was what was happening on the field. But now,
not off the field, yeah.
As I've gotten older and I've covered baseball for a longer time now, I'm more interested in players' personalities and what happens behind the scenes. And it was fun getting to know, Omar Vizquel was a comedian and he loved to do stand-up comedy back in the day.
Oh, really?
So he was telling me about some of his jokes and some of that, and it was fun to watch. There was one point I was interviewing a few of those guys. I think Lofton was there, Baerga, Omar Vizquel, and Sandy Alomar. And Omar starts telling a story, and then they all start getting on each other and making fun of each other. And it's just you could kind of see how that clubhouse would have been 20 years ago, and it's fun to see that those guys are still that way today.
That's fantastic because you have to have a family the winning, and Cleveland would still think of them as World Series champions because they're just not used to having a championship. And that 95 and 97 team and the team of the 90s is just very loved, and it's great to see. And Cleveland was on the cusp of a lot of things in the 90s. Michael Jordan destroyed my Cleveland Cavaliers. Didn't tell you I was a huge Cavs fan, too. So, Zach, if you ever write a Cleveland Cavaliers book, I'll be pumped up about that because
Right.
I love the Cavs. And so you're just a Cleveland sports fan in general, it sounds like, right? Covering Indians and, yeah.
Yeah, and I grew up during the 90s and kind of fell in love with that Indians group, and I loved baseball from the get-go, so that was kind of the go-to. But, right, I mean, maybe I don't have as much love for the Browns because they weren't really around when I was growing up. But,
or you even don't have a team right now, but go ahead, yeah.
Right, it's basically the same thing, but there's more pain involved when they are here and playing the way they are, the way they tend to.
The real Browns are in Baltimore, and that's probably what makes Cleveland fans so upset.
Sure, especially when they have 2 Super Bowl rings.
Exactly.
To their credit. It's such a unique town because you could go to Boston and it seems like you win a championship in some sport every year. You could go to LA and you have 20 teams to choose from. New York, same thing. Chicago, same thing. But Cleveland's got their 3 teams. They're involved in every major sport, and yet there is some hurdle each year that they just can't get over. Mm-hmm. And it's eventually someday they're going to win a championship, and the parade and the celebration is going to be unlike anything anyone has ever seen. And it's hard to even envision what that'll be like. And I think that's kind of what keeps Clevelanders going in their
Do you think it's going to be the Cavs?
Fandom.
Do you think the Cavs are going to be the first? Do you think LeBron will bring an NBA championship?
I would think it would have to. I will say this. If it's not, the Indians are in pretty good position if they do go out and get aggressive when the time comes. But I'll say this, it won't be the Browns. I'm pretty confident in saying that.
We never know if you could figure out a way to make right decisions. But good talking to you, Zach. Best place we can find information on you really quickly.
So 100 Things Indian Fans Should Know and Do Before They Die. It's in any Barnes & Noble in the area or on Amazon. And you can follow me on Twitter at Zach Meisel.
All right. Well, Zach, good talking to you and best of luck. And thanks for coming on the show.
Sounds good. Thanks a lot.
All right. That was the Neil Haley Show. I love it. 100 Things. Can't wait to some more 100 Thing authors, especially ones of sport teams I love, like the Indians. I'm sure my Pittsburgh fans are looking at me like, what? You're talking about the Cleveland Cavaliers, but trust me, I will never say the Browns. Those 2 teams, forget about it. But go to my website, TotalTutor.net, for more information. Twitter, Total Tutor, Neil S. Haley, Facebook. And feel free, at Total Tutor, to tweet me questions, especially that you want answered based on some of these authors. We'll tweet them out, and we'll find those answers. So next week, another amazing guests. And so stay tuned to the Neil Haley Show, and good day.